Janice from NoFixedAddress. Today I'm going to be making a pinecone wreath. At least I'm going to be attempting to, because I'm just winging it. So we're stuck here for the winter in cold, wintry Ontario. And we've rented a cottage for the winter because we can't stay in the trailer. That would be way too cold. And the cottage we've rented is surrounded by pine trees. There's white pines, red pines, beautiful trees. And along with all of the pine trees comes pine cones. So I've decided to try and make a pinecone wreath. So I've collected all sorts of pine cones, various sizes, red pine, white pine, and I'm going to try and figure out how to do this. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos just to give me some ideas, but I'm not following anybody in particular. I'm just winging it as I go. So let's see what we can come up with. Okay, so these are the supplies that I've gathered together. I've got pine cones. And these aren't all of them. I've got some here. Kind of tried to separate them by size. Small ones, a little bit bigger. These ones I still have to do some work on. I've got another huge bucket full of pine cones right there. Those are all white pine cones. And then I've got this big tray here of red pine cones. I've got some yarn. I'll explain what that's for in a few minutes. I've got a pair of scissors and some ribbon, lots of glue sticks, a glue gun, and my wreath form. This is an 18-inch form, and I got this at a garden supply store or nursery. I think you can also get them at Walmart or maybe Michael's, someplace that does craft supplies. Anyway, let's get started. So I put down, I just used a garbage bag, just something to protect the table, because the pine cones still have some pine gum on them, a little bit, and we're working with a hot glue gun. So I want to protect the table, make sure I don't get pine sap or hot glue on the table. I should talk a little bit about the pine cones. So as I said, I collected all sorts of these. I collected a big bucket of them back in September, and they had all pretty much dried out on their own, but they were coated with pine sap. And once we got here, I went out and collected a bunch of smaller ones, so these little guys, and then the red pine cones. And these were all closed up, and they were wet. So all I did was put some parchment paper on a cookie sheet. Here's an example. And I put it in the oven, set the oven to about 200 degrees. And every 20 minutes or so, I would just go and check it and see what was happening and flip them over. These ones were really wet, so it did take a little bit to get them dry. It was probably about an hour, but you can see right in there, that's all pine sap that's come off of them. But the thing that heating them at 200 degrees does is it makes the pine sap go on the outside, so it kind of adds a nice little shine. And they're little tiny bit sticky, but not too bad. They call it caramelizing the pine sap. Anyway, so that was my first step. And then the other thing that I'm going to do with these, some of these smaller ones here, you can see they still have the stem on them. So I'm just gonna take that and cut them off. I have no idea how many of these pine cones I'm going to need. Different things that I was reading was saying that you would need 60 to 80 pine cones of various sizes. I think I have way more than that here, so I should have lots to choose from. So I've plugged my hot glue gun in. I'm using Gorilla hot glue sticks. From what I've heard, they work really, really well. This is a multi-temperature glue sticks, but they're the mini size ones. And I also got a mini glue gun. This is an Elmer's Craft Bond glue gun, and it's a high temperature one. So as I said before, I've never done this before, so not exactly sure what I'm going to be doing. I'm just winging it. I did watch a couple of YouTube videos with suggestions that people had on how to go about this, but they were all seemed to be using one kind of pine cone and one size. So I've got a variety of pine cones here. So as I said, I'm just going to be winging it. Now, one of the problems that I think I've discovered right away is I've got this frame, 18-inch frame, and it's got 3 wires on it. There's not a whole lot of surface for this to stick to. So one of the things I think I'm going to do is just take some of this chunky yarn that I happen to have and see how well it matches. So what I'm going to do is just put a chunk of hot glue there and burn my finger in the meantime. And then I'm just going to start wrapping this around. And you don't have to be too neat to do this because back side of it's going to be up against your door, and the front side is going to be covered with pine cones. So what I'm hoping is that this is just going to give me more of a surface for the pine cones and the glue to stick to. I'm not pulling it really tight, but I want it to be fairly tight. So we're just going to keep going round and round and round until we've got it all covered. It's the other thing with wrapping it with yarn or string or whatever is, if you're putting it on a door, it's also going to protect your door from getting scratched from the metal of the frame. And where I'm going to be putting this is actually on the front door of the cottage, and it has glass in the window. So I'll make it look a little bit nicer on the back side. Lots of advantages of doing this little bit of extra work. If anyone's interested in this particular yarn, it's Lion Brand Wool Ease, which I think is a weight 4. So it's not really thick, but it's not too thin either. And we're done. I'm just going to flip it over here and stick that in. Just cut it off. Awesome. So there it is. And we're ready for the next step. I am going to get some of these pine cones out. Trying to sort of sort them by size. And kind of pulling out some of these ones that have a little bit of a curve to them. I'm thinking that these might be a little bit better to just try and fit around the bottom. I've already got a curve in it. I don't have to worry about fighting with them. So I'm going to try and see if I can get this to stick. Something like that. Now, it's going to look a little weird, I think, right now, but it'll all get covered up because we're then going to be putting more layers on, so you won't see. But you can see right here, there's not a whole lot of surface right there that's holding it on. So this is when your lots of glue sticks and a glue gun that works really well, I think will come in handy. All right, so I am just gonna go right along. Let's see, I'm pushing this in fairly hard. It's high temperature, so it's gonna take a little bit longer to dry. I'm gonna hold it on here for maybe 15 seconds. All right, let's see what happens. Is it gonna stay? Oh, my finger was stuck. Well, it's not too bad. I think we can work with that. It's still a little bit tacky on the back side, so I'm gonna wait for a few more minutes. I think what's gonna happen is as we're building this up, this is gonna be attaching. I'll add some glue in to attach it to the next one, so it should hold really well. All right, now we're gonna move on to the next one. All right, so just kinda, I'll try this one. Stick them in here. See, again, not worried about spaces like this because we're gonna have another layer on like this. And then this is where these little jack pine ones are gonna come in. We stick them in and help cover up those cracks. All right, let's go on with our next. So that's one advantage of putting as much of the yarn on as you can, trying to keep it fairly close together, is you won't have as much of the glue falling through the back that you have to clean up later. As far as I'm concerned with this, there's no right or wrong. You just put what you want, where it'll fit, where you think it looks good. All right, this is what we've got so far. And then on the back side here, we've got a little bit of cleanup to do. Okay, heading on to the next step. So I'm just gonna start finding some pine cones that'll fit. I'm going to try and overlap here so that I don't end up with, you know, kind of stacked up like this. I'm just going to try and get it to overlap so it'll cover some of this underneath and it'll fit in there a little bit. And I suppose we could, I don't think that there's any reason we have to keep going in the same direction. I think I will for this one because it's got the shiny on the outside, but you could flip it around and stick it in there. I guess you just put it in however it fits the best. So I'm going to take this and just try and see where that's going to sit. And should I put it in here or should I put it on here? I think I'm going to try it here. All right, let's see how this works. Again, I'm just going to try and stick it in there and hold it. Wow, that worked well. Awesome. It's fun just to kind of wing it. I'll figure it out as we go. All right, so we're just going to continue in this manner then. And keep going along. Nope, don't like that one. Go back to that one. I'm gonna just try and pick out a bunch and just stick in here. Just kind of place them around, see where they work as we go along, and then I'll just stick them all down. One of the things with baking them in the oven, it was suggested that it would kill any mold or any critters that were inside, any little bugs or whatever. These were all fairly well dried. I did brush out or shake off any sand that was in them. I didn't notice any bugs or critters or smell any mold, but that's supposed to be one of the benefits of putting them in the oven. I seem to be going through about 1 stick for every 2 pine cones. I should mention when I was at the nursery, they had a pile of pine cones, one about this size. They were charging 79 cents for it, and they were charging 49 cents for each of these red pine cones. So we have a fortune in pine cones here. Just going back in and adding some to areas that didn't quite take. And this next one, I'm going to try putting it on here, see if it makes any difference. That's part of the problem, you just don't know where the pine cone is going to end up meeting up. Putting the glue on the actual pine cone itself, you waste a lot with it ending up dripping down into here. Anyway. Awesome, I think that's looking pretty good. I've still got lots of spots to have to fill in. But that's where our smaller pine cones, so some of these little ones will be able to stick in, and the red pine ones will help fill it in as well. I'm going to use some of these smaller ones and build from the inside. So again, trying to get it on this edge here as much as possible. I think one of the things with glue sticks you want to consider in this as well is you want to get something that's a little more clear, because you're going to be able to see it in certain spots. You don't want all these big globs of opaque glue that is showing all over the place. I've got 3 layers on here right now. I'm just kind of playing around here, figuring out what fits. Some of the smaller ones, I'm just kind of sticking the end in so it's going to stick out a little bit instead of just lying flat. And then I can just tuck another one underneath it. I mentioned you need lots of glue sticks. I'm sure half of it is wasted in the pine cones. right. I think what I'll just do is go around right now and see if there's any sections that I think aren't tacked down enough. And I'll just add a little bit more hot glue before I start adding more on top. I guess now we could start filling in. Just start filling in some spots, like right here. I don't know if you can see. You can see right in there. So again, I'm just gonna get some glue on the end of that and shove it in there. All right, I think we're looking pretty good. We still have all of these little ones to go, so we'll fill in any other spots. But one of the things you need to consider right at this point is where we're going to put the ribbon, because I don't want to end up putting all sorts of these little things on top and then stick the ribbon. So I think I'm going to just leave this here, and that's going to be where the top of my wreath is. So I'm going to flip it around so I can get the perspective from here. And we're going to get all of our cute little red pine cones. Just start filling them in. Okay, we've got lots of different sizes here, shapes, colors. Some of them are quite brown, some of them have been outside opened up, so they're gray. Lots of different sizes. So I think the idea, we're just gonna start squishing them in. Just working our way around the wreath, making different sizes, different colors. I'm gonna have some of them lying on their sides, leaning over a little bit. All right, I think we got them all glued down. Let's see how it looks. And there we have it. What do you think? Not bad for found objects. And this is something that anybody can do, even in an RV. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money, and you don't need a whole lot of tools. So go out and explore your backyard, explore the forest, pick up some pine cones, and create. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below and I'll answer as best I can. Thanks for watching.